friends, God is with you.
With his spirit.
A reading from the Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." And then he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke openly about this. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this, Jesus turned around, and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The gospel of our God. Praise to you, Jesus the Christ. Have a seat. Over the years, I have had many heroes, as have you, I'm sure. And like many of us, in the beginning, my first heroes were those who cared for me, my father in particular, whose shadow covered me like a blanket of protection and whose knowledge about nature and ability to create beautiful spaces amazed me. At 13, I deeply admired Shirley Chisholm and her courage in running for president as a black woman at a time when we as a nation were just cutting our teeth on the civil rights era. And now look at us. It's on her shoulders that we stand. I was 14 when Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes tennis match. Some of you might remember that. And I was 58, and my hero was my sister, who bravely battled ovarian cancer and succumbed to death at an early time in her life. Our heroes tell us something about ourselves, don't they? What we value, what we long for. Our images of God form in a similar way. When I was young and a lonely adolescent, I wanted God who would be a friend. When I was a part of the, I'll confess, the moral majority, I don't know if I've told all of you that, I wanted a God who reflected my politics. When my friends and family began to die of cancer and heart disease, I longed for a God who comforts. In our gospel, we hear about the great heroes of the Jews of Jesus' time, messianic figures. Did you think that Jesus was the only Messiah? Messiahs or messianic figures are people who we put hope in. Sometimes they're thought to be divine beings brought into this world. We believe that they have come to bring about a new social order, that they have come to bring peace to a chaotic, unjust society. You could say that our favorite presidential candidates can become for us our messianic figures, if we believe that they hold the capacity to change the world as we know it. For those that Jesus addressed on that day in Caesarea Philippi, their heroes, their messianic figures, are brought up when Jesus asks, "Who do people say that I am?" Perhaps one of the great prophets, or John the Baptist, or Elijah. They didn't really know. And we don't really know when we assign greatness to others. We don't know what lurks behind the persona that they present, behind the performance that they display. What we do and what they did, what is very human to do, is to project on someone what we long for them to be. Our expectations, our desires, our speculations about what they might bring to the table. And sometimes they meet our expectations, but sometimes our expectations are not realistic. I remember when our Bishop Jenke was about to retire. He had been ill for quite some time and unable to perform his duties because of great physical limitations. And so many priests and laity became frustrated at the direction that the diocese was going during that time, with little ability to appeal to our bishop, who openly supported a far-right agenda. For instance, you might recall the Sunday that we were sitting in Mass when he ordered our priest to read from the pulpit a statement stating that a vote for Barack Obama would be a grave and mortal sin. When word spread that Bishop Jenke planned to retire and that a new bishop would be assigned to assist him until such a time as he could be installed, we had hopes, didn't we? Louis Tocco was young and fun, and from Chicago, where more progressive priests live. A graduate of Mundelein Seminary and not Mount St. Mary's, where some of our more conservative priests had attended. You could say he was our messianic figure with a small m. And yet our expectations were dashed because things remained status quo. And the cries of laity were, for the most part, ignored. Hero worship is tricky. I've learned some of that myself with the women's priest movement. It's easy to get caught up in the energy that those who promote change bring with them. It's easy to feel swept up in a movement, welcomed in and embraced in such a way that you miss the red flags, the signs that someone isn't really walking the talk or is driven by their own axe to grind. Perhaps that was the purpose behind Jesus' question. He was checking in. How are you perceiving me? What are you projecting on me? What are your expectations? Because the reality for Jesus was something very different. He was not to be the one to bring about a new social order. He was the one who would show us how to do that. Jesus burst their bubble a bit. Our reading says that Jesus spoke this openly, that the Son of Man would suffer greatly. He would be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and would be killed. After 3 days, he would rise and return to his Father in heaven. I was thinking about this last night. Beloved has been here for about 3 years. So the existence of Beloved is really the length of Jesus' public ministry. That's it. That 3 years, as long as we've been here, that was his impact on the world, and yet here we are thousands of years later. But they had no idea the pain that Jesus carried, and knowing and fully understanding the events that were about to unfold. We don't know the pain that others carry either. Have a good day. How many times have we said that? Have a good day, Beth. It's a nice gesture, isn't it? You engage the checkout clerk, or you talk to someone in customer service, they help you out. You say, thank you, have a good day. The thing is, we don't always know what that means to the person receiving our greeting. JP and I once said, have a good day to a cashier at Myers as we checked out, loaded our bags into the cart. She responded with, today's good, but tomorrow I'm having cancer surgery. In our first reading, we hear the laments of a suffering servant. His name is Deutero, thought to be the servant of the prophet Isaiah. He was suffering with the effects of living in exile in Babylonia. It was a time in history when a large number of Judeans were forcibly relocated to Babylon by the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The story is hauntingly familiar, isn't it? Jews in exile, suffering brutality by their captors. That could be the story of the Jewish man that we are most familiar with, who predicts his own suffering in our gospel reading. I give my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who plucked my beard. My face I did not shield from the buffets and spitting. The cost of being faithful, even to the end. Maximilian Kolbe could tell you something about the cost of being faithful. He was a Polish Franciscan priest. In 1939, as a part of his priestly ministry, Maximilian welcomed and provided care for thousands of refugees, many of them Jews. In 1941, in what felt like an ordinary day, doing what he loved most, Kolbe was arrested by the Nazis and taken to Auschwitz, where he offered his life for another prisoner who had a family and children. He was condemned to death and died by an injection of carbolic acid. Whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it. Have a good day, we might have said to Maximilian Kolbe as he provided care to refugees on that day in 1941. Have a good day, we might have naively said to Deutero, with no idea of the suffering that he endured. Setting his face like flint, eyes locked on God, his hope and his salvation. To us, like the cashier showing up for work, it was just an ordinary day. But it was not. So what are we to take from today's reading? In a world of quick judgments and instant reactions to the behaviors of others, perhaps we would be wise to pause, to let them tell us who they are, to use a holy curiosity about their lives, about who they really are, aside from our projections and our expectations on them. Maybe we should stop taking the quick and easy path and exchanging pleasantries and ask, how are you? What burdens do you carry? Otherwise, how can we live out our faith in such a way that it's authentic? In such a way that it goes beyond those easy pleasantries and platitudes and well wishes. It goes beyond saying, go in peace, keep warm, eat well. As our brother James reminds us, what good does that do if they have no food to eat or no clothes to wear? For faith without works is dead.